Infinity War is a movie that I absolutely love. With its incredibly creative action, really great characters, gut punching ending, and one of the best antagonists of all time, it may just be my favorite Marvel film ever. Which is really saying something because this is a universe with Winter Soldier, Guardians 2, Doctor Strange, and Far From Home, all of which are great. When they inevitably announced that a sequel was coming, I was more stoked than anyone. And then the reviews came and my excitement grew. Then I finally saw the movie and I was content. Did it meet Infinity War? No. Was it a really good movie, something that I wouldn't mind seeing again? Yeah. Was it a masterpiece? I'm sorry, Russo brothers, I just don't think so. I'm still very satisfied with what they did, but I just don't feel like it's the incredible experience Infinity War is. Why is that? You might be thinking, hey, wait a minute, the antagonist is the same in both movies. See, you have no good point at all for why this movie is not the masterpiece of the MCU. How dare you! And while it's true that their name is the same, this is not the same Thanos that the Avengers lost to. Sure, the characters associate this Thanos from the one from Infinity War, but they are not the same person. Thanos at this point has no idea who any of the Avengers are, so he suddenly becomes just another villain the Avengers have to kill. Like Ronin. I get that there's some emotional weight tied to it, but not as much as you might think. This Thanos is also super underdeveloped, and he doesn't have the chance to play off other characters like he did in Infinity War. Thanos in Endgame lost what made this character so incredible. He has a strong motivation for what he does, and he reacts to things like a character would. He cries over having to murder someone, he's surprised when Loki's cold-hearted, and he actually takes care of Gamora. Sure, he's misguided and completely insane, but he is not a one-note character. Ronin is a one-note character. It's actually kind of crazy how layered Thanos is in this movie, when it's basically his first film. I dare you to find any other villain in Marvel that has the emotional complexity Thanos has in Infinity War. Endgame Thanos can't have those moments because he's not revealed until the third act. Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor all have seriously poetic arcs. Throughout Infinity War, they are focused on and really powerful. I think the arcs given to the original Avengers in Infinity War are practically perfect. I do think that about Endgame, but I take issue with how they treated Thor. His grief is set up perfectly. In Infinity War, sure, but also in his own solo movies. In Thor Ragnarok, you witnessed firsthand his entire home being absolutely destroyed. He feels like he's failed as a leader. To make matters worse, Infinity War literally opens with his entire Asgardian family being mutilated, which makes this line so devastating.
I feel like everything's gonna work out fine.
So Thor's entire build-up leads here. Killing Thanos would redeem his arc and be really satisfying. And he completely blows it. This is a really subversive arc, and I think it's a really important moment for Thor. I don't blame him for never returning to heroism. On paper, his motivation lines up. Thor joins the battle 'cause there's beer on the ship. He became a background character when they really should have focused on his arc. What if instead of Thor having no motivation for joining the Avengers, he had refused after being haunted by his failure? Then his father talks some sense into him in a dream or something like that. During the final battle, Thor returns and says, "Let's kill him properly this time." Just imagine the weight that line would carry after no assurance that Thor would ever be back to his old self. It could have been as powerful as Luke's arc in Last Jedi, but it just wasn't for some reason. I know these writers are capable of this work because Captain America's arc exists. The moment on the bench where Cap sits down and explains he spent his life with Peggy was probably the most emotional part of the film. Yes, even more than Stark's death. On top of this, Thor never gets any final confrontation with Infinity War Thanos. He just arrives at his house and chops his head off. I was really surprised that Thanos didn't take any shots at Thor. Anything he said would have stung. For how masterfully Thor's arc was set up, it was resolved really quickly with little attention put into it. Right off the bat, let me just say that the action in both movies is creative and unlike anything I've ever seen before. However, Infinity War I think is a little more interesting. One of my favorite action scenes in Marvel is the moon scene with Thanos. Seeing the different powers interact is really different compared to people shooting guns at each other or people punching. It's really cool to see how the powers of Spider Man, Iron Man, and Doctor Strange all work together, because they're so different. I also really like the Infinity Stones when they're used in battle. Quick side tangent, is anyone else getting sick of these stones? I feel like they're in every other Marvel movie. I mean, I'm kind of glad they're gone. Anyway, despite them being overused, I really like how Thanos uses them, ironically. The confrontation with the Guardians of the Galaxy is a perfect example of this. Instead of Thanos just punching them, he does a bunch of really cool reality bending tricks. The way these stones are used is simply put incredible. Obviously, I would be biased if I didn't mention Endgame's masterful ending. Of course, the Avengers Assemble portion of the battle is the most epic thing I've ever seen. But after that, I feel like it's just people fighting, kind of like the Wakanda battle in Infinity War. Some parts were really cool, but for the most part, I just don't think the creativity ever reached the levels of one of my favorite movies of all time. So, I just spent 7 minutes complaining about this movie. I must really hate it, right? No, Endgame is really good. I love what they did with the arcs other than Thor. I love the opening, and I really like where it took its characters. Other than, like I said, Thor. Unfortunately, it just never reached the masterpiece level for me like its predecessor did. Was I expecting too much because I loved Infinity War? I'm not gonna pretend like that's impossible. But I also hope I've shown why I have this opinion, so you guys can better understand where I'm coming from.